From where I stopped on the foundations. Based on everything that was said on the previous, this is what the president ideally would say, the foundations. Against this background, the following principle will underpin the policies, strategies, and funding mechanisms that we implement in the next 5 years in particular. 1, human beings are not just physical entities whose physical needs such as housing, food, clothing, and medical aid need to be catered for. We also have psychological, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual dimensions that need to be nurtured and fulfilled in order for us to realize our full human potential. Participation in and access to music, theater, literature, film, dance, visual arts, and the like are important means of cultivating these human dimensions so that our education system and society more broadly need to provide exposure and opportunities for all our citizens, irrespective of their economic status or geographical location, to engage with the arts. This resonates with the Freedom Charter, which declares that the doors of learning and culture shall be open. Apartheid dehumanized us, and Black people in particular, by regarding them simply as units of labor. We cannot continue to do this by promoting an education system and social practice that regards our citizens mainly as cogs in an economic machine rather than as holistic human beings, active and rounded citizens, capable of informed action in a democratic dispensation. We are building a society premised on fundamental human rights. Article 27 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights states everyone shall have the right freely to participate in the cultural life of the community and to enjoy the arts. Access to the arts is not a luxury. It is a fundamental human right, along with the rights to shelter, education, food, freedom of thought, and the like. Human rights are for everyone. Given our history and the contemporary inequalities of our society, we must ensure that everyone has the means to enjoy and practice their constitutional rights and freedoms, not only those who have resources, networks, and access to infrastructures based on historical privilege. Our nascent democratic project requires a myriad voices and practices. Our citizens, particularly those in less resourced parts of our country and those in our urban centers with less access to capital, need to have the means to exercise their constitutional right to freedom of creative expression. We have not paid sufficient attention to culture, value systems, traditions, languages, religious beliefs, ways of seeing the world that inform how individuals and communities relate to and practice human rights and fundamental freedoms. We believe in gender equity, in equal rights for our LGBTI citizens, but we do little to interrogate, understand, and mitigate the cultural factors that impact adversely on these rights. Historically, cultural policies have focused narrowly on the arts and heritage. In future, we will recognize the transversal nature of culture, values, traditions, beliefs, etc., and its potentially negative and destructive impacts on various aspects of our lives. The nature of our country's key challenges, inequality, poverty, and unemployment, has caused us in recent times to start with these and examine how all sectors of our society can address these. In doing so, with the creative sector, we have pigeonholed and severely limited its potential by demanding that it serves these political imperatives. Our future approach will be, how can we best nurture, promote, and unleash our creative sector? And in so doing, we will grow our global and continental influence, provide our citizens with a better quality of life, and more organically address the country's three major challenges. Proposals. We welcome the coming into being of the For the Arts Group and its more than 12,800 members, and acknowledge the issues raised by the creative sector. As a government sensitive to its constituency, we have noted that these, and rather than repeat them, we hope that through the following proposals, many of these concerns will be addressed. Most of these proposals are not new, and they represent a synthesis of recommendations that have been in the public domain for a while. In education, all primary school learners will have access to education in music, drama, visual arts, and dance. They will also be exposed to the arts and heritage through at least quarterly visits to museums, plays, music performances, galleries, and so forth. All high school learners will have a foundational course in cultural studies. All high school learners will be required to learn and matriculate in at least one indigenous African language. All high school learners will have the option of taking at least one subject in drama, music, film, visual arts, and design, and dance as a matric subject. Specialist teachers will provide the education and training in these subjects and will be supplemented by artists in residence who will provide practical training and support in their respective disciplines. Each province will have at least one tertiary institution that offers certificate, diploma, degree, and postgraduate courses in each of the art disciplines, in cultural studies, in art and heritage management, including cultural policy and cultural entrepreneurship. Lifelong learning opportunities will be made available through multifunctional art centers that will be distributed throughout the country. On the issue of infrastructure, each province will have nationally subsidized infrastructure that will form part of a national circuit of venues for the distribution of theater, dance, music, film, and other art forms. Those regions that do not currently have a nationally subsidized theater will have state-of-the-art, nationally subsidized, multifunctional art centers with theater or dance, as well as galleries, museums, studios, and rehearsal spaces established in their provincial capitals. In cooperation with provincial and local municipalities, we will roll out 10 multifunctional art centers per year for the next 5 years to ensure that as many of our people as possible have access to the arts and to opportunities to engage in the arts. National government will take responsibility for building the infrastructure, while provinces and local government will be responsible for operational and programmatic costs. We will identify at least 3 tertiary institutions to train the leadership and management necessary to run these art centers effectively and sustainably. There will be no cadre deployment, with the best and the most qualified people being appointed to serve our people through this institution. While it is government's responsibility to make available infrastructure close to where people live in order for them to enjoy the cultural rights outlined above, we will create a fund to support initiatives by citizens to develop cultural infrastructure, particularly in less resourced communities, and to underpin sustainable township and rural cultural ecosystems. We spend more than 1 billion rand on cultural infrastructure, mainly in urban areas, each year. I am not convinced that we are getting optimal return on this investment. We will rigorously examine this expenditure and downgrade and even shut down some of this infrastructure where it is not delivering, to free up resources to support cultural infrastructure initiatives elsewhere. On the issue of funding, our funding for the arts, culture, and heritage sector has, at best, been confused. We talk of creative industry that by definition are driven by markets and profit-making entrepreneurship, but we make available public funds primarily for non-profits, thereby creating and perpetuating a loss-making consciousness within our creative community. The creative sector is best served by a mixed economy ranging from activities that require major public subsidy, e.g. museums, theaters, dance and opera companies, orchestras, etc., to activities that are able to survive in the local and international markets, e.g. stand-up comedy, fashion, visual arts and design, with other activities sustaining themselves through a combination of public sector funding, private sector sponsorship, and box office income. Accordingly, we will make public funding available in recognition of three broad practices of the arts through different funding mechanisms. A, funding to support the arts in their own right, to support freedom of creative expression, to support creative practice for human development through structures such as the NAC, NFVF, etc. B, funding to support cultural social entrepreneurs, namely those who use the arts for socially good ends to change behavior without there necessarily being paying markets for such work. Art for social development, social coherence. And C, funding, startup grants, low interest loans, etc., to support profit-making micro and small creative enterprises, art for economic development, including support services as marketing, event management, and other such initiatives. We will bring together the various funding agencies, NAC, NFVF, BASA, SAHC, NLC, MGE, etc., to unite behind a common vision for the sector, with each playing their particular but complementary role rather than competing against each other. We will institute one application form for all funding agencies. Funding agencies will be required, at risk to their most senior staff, to make their first grant installment to successful applicants no later than 4 months after the deadline for funding application. And follow-up grants will be made within 6 weeks of reports being received. Public funding agencies will be required to assist creatives in completing application forms and in submitting their reporting requirements. Corporates may allocate tax-free up to 0.5% of their taxable income, and individuals may allocate up to 5% of their taxable income to arts projects, companies and artists of their choice. On the issue of employment, by their labor-intensive nature, some genres within the performing arts are less able to survive purely in the marketplace than practitioners within other disciplines who operate more as individuals. Accordingly, government, national and provincial, will subsidize one contemporary dance and one theatre company per province, each with 10 to 12 members, at least 50% to be women and inclusive of technical staff, with the option of being based at the nationally subsidized provincial theatre or arts infrastructure. National government will subsidize 1 touring African dance ensemble, 1 touring opera company, 1 African music orchestra, and 1 classical music orchestra to be based in the same city as the opera company. Existing companies as well as new entities will be invited to apply to be granted the subsidies, with government intention to have these companies spread between the north and the south of the country. Nationally subsidized infrastructure and companies will be provided with resources to contract resident choreographers, directors, playwrights, designers, etc. on short to medium term, up to 3 years contracts. No nationally subsidized infrastructure may employ an artistic director for longer than 5 years to allow for fresh blood to enter and older blood to be circulated through the industry. We will work with artists' unions and professional associations to set minimum remuneration scales which shall apply across the board, public and private institutions. Funding agencies will be provided with ring-fenced funding aimed specifically at providing new entrants into the industry with capital to create and distribute their work. Social benefits. We have instructed SARS to interrogate the nature of the arts industry and the intermittent sources of income which characterize the sector, and to devise and implement appropriate tax scales and a tax system that recognize the unique circumstances of the industry. As per UNESCO's recommendation concerning the status of the artist, government will pass legislation to provide unemployment insurance for the creative sector, including artists, technicians, etc., and underwrite a provident fund and medical insurance scheme specifically designed for this sector. A retirement village for the creative sector will be established in the north and the south of the country. A mechanism will be created to support creatives and technical personnel who have mental health concerns, as well as those who wish to recover from substance abuse. On the issue of culture, we will work with 3 tertiary institutions, each responsible for 3 different provinces, to undertake ongoing research into the cultural practices, traditions, belief systems, and values of communities in those provinces to help us to understand the impact of culture on our development strategies and vice versa, so that we may formulate appropriate strategies to mitigate adverse relationships where necessary. These cultural research institutes will also inform the development of cultural studies courses at schools and tertiary institutions, as well as the aesthetic development of the country's artistic and creative practices. As culture is a transversal phenomenon impacting on all aspects of society, it cannot be managed in a ministry acting as a silo. Accordingly, we will establish a cultural unit in each national department to interrogate, monitor, and manage the relationship between the goals and mandate of that department and the culture of the citizens who are to be its beneficiaries. These units will be coordinated by the department responsible for arts, culture, and heritage. Ombudsman. The arts, culture, and heritage sector is not immune to the challenges of gender-based violence, corruption, poor governance, and victimization that plague our society generally. In consultation with the sector, we will develop a code of conduct that will govern behavior and interpersonal relationships within the sector, and which all will be required to abide by, particularly those who receive and benefit from public funds. An independent ombudsman will be appointed to serve the creative sector in particular, and it will be sufficiently resourced to deal with allegations of corruptions, contraventions of the Code of Conduct, labor relations issues, incompetence within government and publicly funded agencies. All allegations will be registered on a website, and progress in resolving each item may be monitored on the website. The Ombudsman will be empowered to grant the fullest protection to whistleblowers, and whistleblowers will be able to submit allegations and information to the Ombudsman anonymously if they choose. In conclusion, we'll do all the groundwork necessary in order to ensure that all the proposals outlined here will be implemented from 1 January 2021, if not before. Accordingly, we will need fresh energy and expertise to drive this program. I will not finish the rest of that letter, but those are the 75 points as outlined on the request by the artists and the creative industries on the I'm for the Arts page. So because we still have time, and because we always operate on good faith, we will allow that we can go back to the 5 points raised from the previous agenda, but at least we've addressed all the concerns, so that if we don't have another meeting, at least you have our concerns in front of you. So I will hand back over to you, DG, to then address the 5 agenda points as stated in the proposed agenda items I sent last week.
No, thanks very much. Can I just sought clarity on one thing? The letter you've read, as you said, is from a gentleman by the name of Van Gaal. Yes. Is that based on what the whole sector have said, or is it his views as an individual, based on what Mr. Forbes had raised about some scanning of the environment?
So, over the past 4 weeks, we have collected the concerns of the members of I'm for the Arts, and Kgauhelo Dube wrote he collated the points into 75 points. So Mike took the 75 points and wrote a desired speech by the president of the country addressing the arts and the industry. And this is the make-believe of the speech and what it would sound like. So essentially, it's like, you know, if it was a play, you would say it's a one-man show giving the state of the national arts by the president of the country, based on what the industry itself has said about what the concerns are. It covers everything from education to governance to day-to-days.
Yeah, it's in
I was just checking if we could ask questions as well, because I mean you've presented to us. I was just looking at the issue of unemployment insurance fund, retirement village. Has there been any thought in terms of how that will be funded? I mean, from your consultations, maybe before the idea came about.
Lindy?
Can I, during the discussions on...
Sorry, Pumzi. let's just take the clarities and then we'll proceed.
Thanks, just my question is, I mean, I understand the speech takes into consideration all the issues raised by members for arts. Has the speech taken into consideration what has happened in the last 15 or 20 years or so? Or rather, what has government done?
Yeah, thank you very much, DG. I just need clarity because now I didn't quite understand that you said you did a survey. Mr. Forbes, you presented the results of the survey, you know, just a snapshot. And we didn't hear, you know, much about it, you know, the methodology that was used, the level of significance, you know, how true is the results, and, you know, how did you come about with those, the factors that you used to which Sibongile is saying they used the results to compile the speech. You know, I'm interested to find out, you know, the level of significance of those results from the survey that you did.
Okay, Nyamza, and then
okay, now TG, I was attempting to address the issue of funding. For example, things like unemployment and unemployment insurance fund. Artists are always, artists are always charged UIF. But if you go to the Department of Labor as an artist, you will struggle to get funding. I'm yet to meet someone who says they just went there and it was a walk in the park and they got paid at the time they were not working. Even myself, I've not been working for over a year, like formally, but I've been paying unemployment fund to the government since 1995. But whenever I'm unemployed as an artist, I don't get benefit from unemployment fund. I'm coming to the answer. That, I mean, not answer, but my suggested solution. And artists are charged 25% by SARS. And you don't get much in terms of your returns from SARS. So the suggestion from the group is that the department should come up with a certain model that will take care of unemployed artists. Because obviously the Department of Labor is not helping us, they're just looting money from us. Same as SARS. One of the suggestions was that maybe artists should be exempted from paying tax and UIF. I mean, I know from experience, having worked in this industry for over 20 years, that you can work for 3 months in a year and be famous. And it's such a shame for an artist who's famous, but he can't even afford a car. And in most cases, he can't or she can't even afford to look after their children. So we have a department here in this country, and everyone is asking, what is our department doing? So my suggestion is that the department, the artists actually, not just me, the artists are suggesting that the department comes with a certain model that will be able to have a certain unemployment fund that will pay artists without a lot of heartache. And yeah, so those are the suggestions that are there. So the ball is being thrown into the department. Come with a funding model. Talk to your other sister, brother departments your labor department and your SARS or treasury and say, we've got people here who are really suffering, but you keep taking money from them. Why don't we take care of this thing ourselves, because we work with them?
One of the reasons behind that, artists tend to be on short-term contracts. People on short-term contracts are classified by SARS and the Department of Labour as consultants. They pay taxes at a higher rate, and they do not qualify essentially for UIF without a massive fight. That is the biggest problem. They need to be reclassified. They're not consultants. It's that simple.
Yeah. DG, to first of all address your inquiry about the poll. It was not a scientifically designed, methodologically sound poll, because we don't have the resources for that. We put up a poll with neutral words on the page, and we asked everyone to vote. And after it ended, these were the results. So I don't think anyone is expecting you to take it as absolute, like, word of God that this is the result. But I think what it shows is that the general perception of the industry of this department is that it's not working. And I think that is the kind of thing that we need to listen to from what everyone is saying, because people are complaining a lot about the department. The fact that we have 75 different points that were made, and many of those, there were more than one input into the one thing, because everyone was saying the same thing. That alone ought to just say that the department is not working as well as it ought to be. And in fact, that's the reason why we're here, is so that we can work with you to make it work better. We are not here to be in a us and them situation. We are not here to fight with you. We want to work with you. We want to collaborate with you, because we want to see South Africa going forward. And we are struggling to do that because artists are disrespected very, very widely. We are completely disrespected, even to the point where you guys were late this morning. We were here on time. We were like waiting for you. The meeting started at 20 minutes past 9. But the meeting was scheduled to start at 9. So we feel we are disrespected always. Last time that we met, we waited for an hour. You know, it's not right, guys. It's not right. But to get back to the DG's point of how would we fund like old age home and things like that, we don't have steady jobs, right? So we don't have pensions, we don't have medical aids, we don't have any of the perks that one would get when you have a full-time job. Added to that, you work, as Hum said, maybe for 3 months of the year. So the money you earn in that 3 or 6 months or whatever has to carry you throughout the year. There are no performance bonuses. There's no 13th check. There's nothing like that. There's only a short-term contract. So our lives are incredibly insecure. And it's necessary to create some kind of safety net that can actually help us. And one of the ways we can do that is, you know, the department would be able to go to the big finance houses, Liberty, Old Mutual, whatever, and say, we want you to create a pension scheme that is affordable, and maybe the department can subsidize some of it, that is affordable for artists to join. So they pay a little bit, the company subsidizes it a little bit because they ought to be giving back to society, and the department does the rest. In that way, we could create some kind of financial security for artists, or a funeral scheme, or something that can help artists to be able to move up a little bit in their world, because, you know, so many artists, and especially we see it on the page, they are stuck down there. They are stuck down there, and there's no way up. And we all know that there's lots of unemployment, and there's lots of all the other issues that we have, but, you know, it's up to you guys to be able to change policy. And we are here to help you, to say, well, why don't you do this? I mean, you know, we've got thousands and thousands of creative brains that can help. We have experts in all sorts of fields, and yet we are ignored. We are disrespected. We're spoken down to as if we children who, go and make your art, man. You know, don't come and speak to us about the real world. You know, if you think that the NDP was drawn up by Manuel, without a single person on that group that drew up the NDP, not a single person from the arts. Now, how's that? I mean, that really makes me think. That really makes me think that they actually don't respect what we know and what we do, because all the incredible things, Estimate Schwangus, well, now it's like Rolls-Royce, before it was the BMW. Those things are the things that draw tourists here. You know, the tourism industry in 2018 was worth 425.8 billion rand. 1.5 million jobs. The creative industries. We actually in 2014, the cultural economy alone was worth 90.5 billion rand, or 2.9% of GDP. Agriculture at that time was only 2.2. So, I mean, you know, it's not like we're insignificant or we aren't important. We want to be respected, and we want to be worked with, because we have a lot to give.
Sorry, I'm sorry for if I sound like I'm dominating the meeting, but just one point. I think it will also help. I don't know, I mean, I'm not undermining your stuff, but I think it will help. If you've got artists, you've got experience of being on the ground, and you've got experience of suffering as artists in this country that has been supposedly free for the last 26 years, but artists are still suffering. I think it will be important if you draw talent, because I just got a light bulb, as David was saying, that artists are creative. Artists, I mean, they're not just acting and dancing and all of that. They're also business people. They've got ideas on how to raise funds. So maybe that will also help you to design funding models. If you get people who already have that experience of being on the ground and walk down that street. Because it is very shameful right now. Artists are in self-imposed exile. and some are already moving out of the country. I mean, look at the likes of Trevor Noah. He mentioned it publicly because he says he saw that the country is not working. We've got leaders who are just like stooges running the country. He decided to leave the country. That is exile. And he's not the only one. And what he said speaks for a lot of other artists who are in the country. You don't want to see the soul of the country leaving the country, which is the art.
Okay, just to address the issue of how to fund the village and insurances and all of that, if we go back to the actual speech, there's a whole section about funding and how the industry should work. And that point actually addresses this issue extensively, because the important thing is that we understand one thing. It's a business, show business. Sometimes we talk about shows without understanding the business side of show business. And as long as we treat the arts as non-profit organizations and the poor cousin, we will continue saying, how will we fund this? It's important that this department understands that the industries, the creative industries, are not the poor cousin that has to be funded. We are not looking for handouts. We are looking for enablement to contribute to the economy of this country. Empower us to actually run like profit-making businesses. I said this at the last meeting. If you empower us to employ, we actually contribute to the employment. The biggest issue in this country is unemployment, but we are not given the ability to create employment. One company can create employment for 1,000 people. Drivers, makeup artists, technical, the actual performers, administrative stuff. There's a lot in there. But the important thing is to change. There's got to be a paradigm shift in how the department itself is looking at the industries. Because if you keep saying, how are we going to fund this? Then you are not looking at the industry as an income generating entity. You're looking at it as an entity that actually depletes funds. We don't deplete funds. We generate an income, but we got to be enabled to do that. And by so doing, you actually incentivize corporates to actually put money in the department itself so that it expands its reach. Because corporates will always ask, what is the mileage for me if I put money in you? If you're saying you're only covering 5 people, what is the mileage for a corporate? You have to be able to say, this is what we are covering. We're looking at 1 million artists. And that is the reach that you are giving to corporate. Why wouldn't corporate give you that? They give it to sport because of the reach. But the arts are limited because they are run as non-profit organizations. We cannot be run as non-profit organizations. We need to be seen as generating income and providing employment and changing and also contributing to the GDP of the country. And in terms of the question about, did we take into account what the government has done in the past 15 years? Of course we have. Yes, the government has done something. It's just not far-reaching enough. If I have 5 kids and I only look after 1, what happens to the other 4? So, yes, we acknowledge that there has been stuff that has been done. It's just not enough. We feel that there can be more that can be done. And that doesn't take away from the gains. But we believe that we cannot be patting ourselves on the back for achieving 1% of 100%. We should, even the education system says it's 33 is a pass. That is, we've downgraded ourselves. When I was growing up, 50 was a pass. And to excel, you had to reach 85% at least. But now we've become those people who pat ourselves on the back for gaining just a little bit, just to say, "Mara, at least we are doing something." We're not a Mara, at least community. We've got to be that community that actually force ourselves to excel, and we have to have higher standards for ourselves. On the significance of the polls and validity, we take the members of I'm for the Arts serious enough to say whatever they say is valid. And so even if our polls may not be scientific, they are scientific in the sense that they represent the percentages that have been given based on what the artists have to say about what the department is doing for them. Then the polls are valid. So I hope I've answered everything.
Maybe can I just say something, DG, before we... Yeah, we're talking to the point of hands out. When we say we don't necessarily need hands out. It's quite frustrating, and it does pain one when you are seated there in your country and people are attempting to sing the national anthem and they're actually messing it up. And you've got the tool to help them. And this speaks to the mandate of the Department of Arts and Culture to say, to a greater extent, why do we have to play a CD for the national anthem? Because this is our pride. And if you go to the National Arts and Culture and say, can I help in teaching the national anthem? But you'll never get offered a space. So, we're talking about things that speaks to what Department of Arts and Culture needs to protect. And I mean, to a greater extent, the national anthem, when it was composed for 4 voices. But you find one person singing it, and you start to think, this is a national anthem supposed to be for mass. And if you decide to say it must be sung by one person, then what are we saying? But we'll always have such things because these things are not being regulated. So if we are given a chance to can talk and have an access to the Department of Arts and Culture, we are able to can advise. I mean, arguably so, I'll tell you, everything that you do on planet Earth, it's arts. You talk about a doctor, they need to be creative. You talk about a lawyer, they need to pick up good words to construct a very convincing sentence. We are seated in here, this is arts. But we can't start to think like arts as a piece of tissue on the floor, because arts make us who we are in the end. So we're just saying, can we just have a change, a paradigm shift of thinking about the arts? Because it's not a by the way, it's very significant.
Yes, Kgauhelo.
Thank you very much, DG. I would just like to say, based on our experience of interacting with over 12,000 people on the page, I think we would all like to see the Department of Arts and Culture being an advocate for the creative sector. You have programs, you have units, but outside of that, what is the department doing to advocate for the creative sector across the different departments? Because my understanding is that there are intergovernmental agreements in place that can be exploited. For example, there was a question about a retirement village. I see a lot of condemned village buildings all over the country that are owned by the Department of Public Works, yet artists are homeless. So we would like to see the department advocating, speaking to the other ministries, and really advocating for artists. Thank you.
I think we thank you very much for your inputs. I think in your comments you are also giving us your ideas on what needs to happen. Maybe let me start with the issue of conditions of service, as you've mentioned, some of the challenges you have. I'm not aware if are you aware of the government gazette that went out recently by Department of Labour? And the closing date was, I think, the 12th of Feb, was the 11th. In this act, this gazette this is what the inputs were required, particularly to zoom in on the conditions of service. One is about the issues of, or it says here, intention to deem persons in the film and television industry as employees for purposes of some parts of the basic conditions of employment. He then touches on main key things we've raised: the issues of annual leave, the issue of pay for annual leave, the issue of sick leave, the issue of proof of incapacity, application of occupational accident or diseases, maternity leave, severance packages. These are some of the issues that at this stage government is trying to deal with, some of the basic conditions that are facing the creatives. And the request was that then the public inputs be made by the 11th so that we can really address some of these conditions. Because you'll remember, there was one of the worst things that happened, one of the artists of the film actors who died, dropped and died at the shooting site. And the question was, but what is being done to protect them? But personally, as a department, we have also, at my level, engaged with the Department of Labor around looking at all the legislation regulating working environment. And we've been assigned with the Chief Inspector to work on dealing with the issues of conditions of service and what can be done. So if you were not able to have that opportunity to make those inputs, maybe when the Department of Labor proceeds, but we'll keep you also posted. But I'm just saying that there are efforts to try and respond to some of the outcry related to conditions of service that faces creatives. And it's important that those things are dealt with through policy and legislation as you've advised. Talking to the issue of we've got the presentation about the copyright as well as the issue of the status of the white paper. We'll provide you with that, just to take you where it is at this stage. And if there are any opportunities, we'll take you through that. But let me also just indicate that the issue of working with the Department of Basic Education and making sure that arts, culture, and heritage are in the mainstream of the curriculum. It is an engagement we have, but a number of things have already been done. If you look at the curriculum, the question that we had to deal with the Department of Basic Education, key to that, was: do you have capable, trained people to teach this and deliver the curriculum from a pedagogic perspective? Because not everybody also can just say, I understand art and therefore I stand in front of children. But also not every artist is by nature a pedagogic person, and therefore will require also certain skills. That is why we have an MOA with the basic education. But in terms of what areas, for now as an intervention, one of the key things was to have a program we call Artists in Schools. And that program aims to ensure that at least schools begin to have expertise from the sector, working with educators in the classroom to begin to transmit the issue of the culture, arts, and heritage in the schools. So, but we've got a presentation on that, which can just show what is being done in working with the basic education. You've raised a question that is quite serious and extremely concerning around the welfare and the well-being and the state of mind of some of the artists. When we deal with that matter, I think it's important to, firstly, as you've depicted, the conditions, 3 months, and thereafter you become famous today, tomorrow there's nothing and nobody can see that. But out there, people already expect you to live a life that is outside of what you had for that moment because you had a hit single. Now, in that regard, what the minister has instructed, which we have finalized, was the issue of how can we have at least a wellness program that will assist artists, both not just in terms of counseling if you are feeling depressed, because that things are there. But the question is what Sibongile said. This is not a show, it's show business. How do we make sure that our creatives have got business acumen adequate enough for them to be protected even from entering into contracts that are going to rob them of their future income in future? But also then to deal with the issues of financial intelligence aspect. How can we work with them in that? And that's a process we are busy with, and finalizing that process in terms of getting such support for the artists. In fact, the team that is here is supposed to be sitting and adjudicating during the course of this month and finalize that. But that is almost similar to what we have as a department, as employees, because we get support because we've got what we call the EAP program. But here we looked at it and it's bigger than just EAP. It's about a lot of making sure that these entrepreneurs who penetrate the field with so many blockages and ceilings that they are facing are able to navigate that environment. So, just to say that there is effort that is needed to put even more effort on that, to support them, to support their existence, which I think is important, Sibongile, what you're saying, that the existence of creatives is not a favor for government. They exist because they are naturally talented. It's one of the most gifts that you can't take away from them. So working with the creatives is something that we need to make sure that it benefits them, because if that happens, someone spoke about cultural tourism. Now, we have here the issue under cultural tourism and creative industries. A number of interventions and initiatives. Some of them maybe we're not communicating enough. Some of them are not reaching as many people as they should. But as we are engaging here around those issues, as we discuss how we get out there and go out there to inform on what is available, what demand is doing, we should be able to say, yes, this is not enough, but this is what is available at this time. So, financial security, I really appreciate that it's a two-way stream. Because remember, creatives have a responsibility when they make money to know what is going to happen tomorrow. It might not be there. If they don't do it that way and invest in the money, and I think Sibongile made, if I'm correct, quote or make a point of reference around this issue, that in the country there is that challenge of people who will need support. You are not crying for handouts. That's what you said. You want support, enabling environment that will make and give you those opportunities. So when we ask ourselves a question, what makes an artist or a creative more successful than others? What makes other artists and creatives die as paupers and others thrive? We must find then a response that is comprehensive to make sure that as partners, how do we empower artists so that in line with their craft, they are able to secure the future, their future. Government, as I'm talking to now, as you know, we are dealing with a number of priorities, and I know you mentioned the issue of priorities. Now, these cannot not be also political priorities to deal with unemployment, to deal with poverty, to deal with inequality. Arts as a sector cannot sit on the sidelines and not respond to deal with these challenges. In fact, Mr. Forbes, if you don't mind, I think it will help to go and look at the mapping studies done by South African Cultural Observatory, which is a research arm of the department. It has done a number of research studies in relation to this field, because the department realized that we cannot treat this as a show. I like the show business. But if you read there, which is why we need a scientific determination of how we respond to the needs of the sector. Now, I would suggest that you also do look at that website of Southern Cultural Observatory. It will tell you these contributions of the sector. And that is why even the ruling party has made this issue of creative cultural industries one of their priorities. If you read their manifesto, you will understand this, not just on the periphery by the wayside, and how we can work with you to make sure that, because particularly film has been identified as one of the areas that create multiplicity of jobs. Just one film. So I just want to say to the team, in relation to significance of this sector, maybe already the paradigm has been shifted, if not abandoned. But I think concrete interventions need to be visible and be seen. So we will be able to deal with those issues. I'm not sure, Pumza, when you talk about Trevor Noah, reasons for departure here, when you compare the dollar and the rand, and vis-a-vis your future to blossom, because people in this country live or immigrate for a number of reasons. But I can tell you from my previous life that those who also return for a number of reasons. So when we talk about both brain drain and brain gain, it's a two-way street. Ours is to try and retain the talent that is here. But to now try and use Trevor Noah's reasons for departure as an attack on government can't be correct. Because then it means I must also bring those who are gonna sing praises to the government. When are we gonna end with that competition? What you have raised for me is what I think there are issues here that the team says we need to address. We need to then say, what is that platform that we're gonna use to address these issues? And as we move towards that, we will be able then to say that pact, compact, the sector compact that we say we want to have. Now, well, I know you will be saying there have been conferences, there have been compacts, but the issue is that we are saying let's rebuild trust, and you need that agreement. That says how are we going to work in terms of that. But what I'm saying is that at the end of the day, we can be able to then agree when we have done just that, because of time, as we said, just to respond on the issues we had agreed to and what you had sent to us, and then say how do we take the process forward. We will go back to the issue of unionization or federations, because I think in that letter also, although that issue comes out quite strongly, that there is a need for the federation and the union. We can't wish that away, because any organized formation can be a collective voice for the creatives. In fact, I can share with you that when we had this conference of CIFSA, one of the issues was the model of CIFS that had to be reviewed. And those delegates were clear that it rather work as a federation rather than as an NPO. Because if it's a federation, then it's got voices from different sector organizations. In that way, you are able to then to say, all these sectors, how does government respond to a single voice of creatives to take this to even greater heights? So we will allow us an opportunity then, because the issue of the ombudsman in the copyright amendment bill, those things are there. To say, instead of paying too much money, because it's costly to challenge for your rights. That's why the concept of ombudsman is then suggested for the same. So that the intellectual property issues, royalties issues, are addressed in that way, rather than paying advocate in the senior counsel when we cannot afford that. But your intellectual property is being exploited. So we will allow us just an opportunity, not much time, but an opportunity, because what we would like to do then is to spend more time on where to from here. But there were two hands that were itchy. Can we take those two hands and then allow us to then respond? Because I still hope that with the corruption issue, you will provide us with the names. The lawyers will. No, we want that. Please go help us clean up. Help us clean up. Yeah. On those names and numbers, we still have not a single reported lead that we can follow on corruption.
Just to respond to the issue of corruption and names, DG, truth of the matter is, because of recent events, people see people being victimized on social media, in the newspapers, and they're afraid. They're afraid. Artists are afraid to come out, because every time they come out, they are victimized. And that's why, for us, this is a safety net. I'm prepared to take the bullet and say, I'll come out as Sibongile. But now the thing is, for most artists, I'm for the arts has become a safety net, where literally we can just come out and say, you know your department, you know your people. I can literally come to you and say, you know this person, that person, that person. But now the problem is, artists are afraid of being victimized, because they have been victimized. If you're gonna lose your job when already the playing field is not level, and you find yourself, because you are being vocal, being gagged with lawyers, that you cannot afford lawyers to actually protect you. Now you have a David and Goliath kind of situation, where literally, these are the things we used to complain about as black people against white people in the apartheid era, that white people come at us with money. And now this is what is happening in this industry. Yes, against my bodyguard.
Goliath must watch out.
So, you know, artists are afraid because they're victimized. Every time they come out, then they are gagged with lawyers, because you don't have money to pay for a team of lawyers that is going to come out. So essentially what we are doing now on the front of the legal, we are compiling a whole set of cases that we can bring like this to you on a basket, because then that protects people, because otherwise then it becomes a he said, she said. No. We are literally collecting all the evidence, and then we're presenting it as a collective so that we protect individuals, because people are being victimized left, right, and center for coming out.
Yes, Hedwig.
Thank you. Thank you. I've escaped from behind the camera just to address or to respond to a couple of things. The first is in terms of, you asked the question, what platform is the appropriate platform? So I just want to give you feedback that 13,000 people have watched our last meeting as of this moment. It was that that video of the meeting was shared 123 times. We received over 602 comments. So in terms of this meeting becoming amplified and reaching a much larger sector of the community is very significant. And people will in the coming weeks watch this meeting too and respond to and comment and contribute to the content that is discussed here. So it's a shift in the way we organize. It's a shift in the way we sit in meetings. And yet it's significant. It's a groundswell. It's a way of dealing with the resources that we have and leveraging the resources we have available to ourselves as artists and people within this sector of the arts. I want to address with you the issue of programs in schools and arts programs in schools. I think within schools and outside of the schools is point 3 on the agenda. I'm curious to know whether any of the colleagues, I believe there is one colleague who is dealing with arts education specifically. Do you have numbers of how many schools offer one of the arts, even just one, never
Sorry,
mind.
Hedwig.
Yeah.
Sorry. The live stream is off.
No, it's on.
It's off. They've just sent a thing to say that the live stream is off.
No, it's going.
It shows the live stream is going, but there's no audio coming out.
Okay, let's see. Audio is full volume. It could be I'm using my own data to project this.
Could be their phones.
Buffering.
It could be buffering.
Yeah.
Okay? We are recording this anyway and we'll post it. The question around arts education. How many schools in South Africa offer either drama, design, visual art, dance as an FET subject? How many of the intermediary teachers are trained in arts and culture or in creative arts, as well as senior phase teachers? What skills training are the teachers receiving who did not train in creative arts, who are teaching creative arts in schools? But most critically, in the areas that are not centers, like for example the Northern Cape, how many schools actually even offer one of the arts as a FET, meaning grades 10, 11 and 12 as a FET subject? Because in my experience, it just doesn't even exist as a subject. So I'm very curious to know whether you have those numbers available. And then I also want to say, the DG has stepped out, but I want to say that I hope there will be time for us to address point 1 or get feedback on point 1 of the agenda, which asks about payments, outstanding payments, whether there has been progress for that deadline of the 29th of February. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can I then give you an opportunity? I think colleagues are noting the questions that you have asked. Can we switch off other mics, please, so that, yeah. You had your hand up. Yes, yeah.
Right. Again, in terms of the education, it actually starts in grade R, to be honest, is where the problems start already. The core syllabus is not bad. It's really not a bad core syllabus in terms of arts and culture. However, it assumes that every school has the facilities and the teachers. How many schools in this country actually have an area, a dance studio, an art room where you've actually got the equipment? How many have actually got musical instruments? And I'm not talking about a thing you shake. Actual musical instruments. How many have got teachers who are qualified to train a choir? How many? They're not there. So there is a core syllabus that is requiring things. I have taught in a school outside Tembisa where the dance room was a tiny container with holes in the floor. And what we had to do was all the kids from, say, for example, grade 4, it's arts and culture now. So I have anything up to 70 kids in this little container, and we have to dance. How does that work? The core syllabus has assumed things, and the only people that are actually benefiting from the core syllabus are the same people that benefited from apartheid. The ones in private schools and the formerly Model C schools in the better areas. Nobody else is benefiting from this. We are still in apartheid as far as arts and culture are concerned.
Okay, can we agree that we were left with about 10 minutes? And agree that we'll finish at at 12. And in fact, I wanted to correct this thing of Mr. Forbes saying that we kept you waiting. It might have been downstairs. You found us, we left at 8:45 at the 16th floor to come down here to wait for you. So to cast those aspersions, Mr. Forbes, I know you might be angry, but sometimes just restrain yourself on those things, please. But can I really request that we take you through what we had prepared, and then we agree on the way forward. I think this is a good start, but we do have to get to where things move. Just to say that the issue of, when you have a family, can I use your analogy? When you have a family of 3, you earn a salary of 500 rand, you are able to feed your family. But your son gets older, he's unemployed, he gets married, he has children who are also 3, same as yours, but you still have 500 rand. You need to split that cake to now feed 6 mouths. What I'm saying here is that, you see, apartheid, we keep referring to it. Apartheid had a huge tax base based on exploitation and destruction of people of this country. And what they did then, they were able to provide any facility only for the white generation at the time. That is why today we talk about former Model C schools. So when people make these serious allegations about comparing this government and the issue of apartheid, I think we must begin to start thinking, is this a fair comparison? Because you can't compare an illegal state to a democratic state that has to deal with huge backlogs. Huge backlogs. I'm from the education sector, if you don't know. I know. Just in the Val, our children were learning under what we call a platooning system. Now when you have this slice of the cake that you have to split to build more schools so that learners do not come from 7 to 11 and others start at 12 to go home at 3. So we have challenges, we are accepting that. And progress might be slow. Unfortunately, our country has got a constitution that says citizens must be active citizenry, which is why we're sitting with you here, because you can't sit on the corner and keep quiet when things are not going right. So I'm appealing that I'm neither an apartheid apologist no democracy apologies. I'm just putting facts on the table before you compare me to some apologist, apartheid apologist. So I'm just saying that let us just balance those things. Can I ask that, Mr. Ndim, can you take us just in terms of the presentation? I will tell where I take over, so that we assist colleagues, so that they can see that we did not sit on our laurels and just said, well, the meeting is coming. We did try, and we make a commitment. We'll continue to deal with the issues that you also have raised. But just get to know us. You know why social cohesion is important? Because people sometimes share spaces they will never share if we don't bring them together. So we are sitting together now. So the first slides are talking to, can you get to know us a little bit better? Over to you.
Thank you. Maybe just zooming into the mandate of the department. Because DG, I think that we have covered a wide range of matters, but let's maybe just go straight to the mandate of the department. As you can see that we draw our mandate from the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. And of course, there are specific sections within that constitution that talk to us, like section 16.1, which talks about the freedom of expression, freedom of artistic creativity, freedom to receive or impart information or ideas, and academic freedom and freedom of scientific research. Issues of language and culture that you spoke about, access to information when it comes to issues of libraries and archives. Of course, we promote equality and human dignity. Then we've got a wide range of legislative frameworks that govern the kind of work that we do. I'm not going to go through that. And then, of course, something that I need to point out quite clearly is that our role is to create an enabling environment for arts, culture, and heritage to thrive. And of course, there are pillars that on which we are premised. For instance, the issues of language development, promotion. I've spoken about access to information, where you talk about archives, records, and libraries, nation building and social cohesion, heritage promotion and preservation, arts and culture promotion and development. So that's broadly what we are about. And of course, within these broad parameters, you would find each and every one of us in there. For instance, the artists, people who are involved in the performing arts, the visual artists, and the wide range of areas. Of course, the enablers for that is governance. We have to have good governance, human capital development, which is about people, because sectors can only be sustained by people and people with expertise. Infrastructure, the infrastructure that you have been talking about here, we're talking about theaters, we could talk about museums, memorials, and monuments. And partnerships, of course, that our work can only thrive if we forge partnerships with various sectors, interdepartmental linkages, as well as private sector partnerships. And of course, funding, which is one of the biggest issue, and of course, one of the factors that we always talk about, because there's so many demands, but very little in terms of funding. Now, I don't know, Titi, whether I need to get to the issues of branches. We can, if you feel like, for instance, we would have got corporate services.
I think the feedback I'm getting certainly from the live feed is that people say they know it and they would like to use the last bit of time for us maybe to deal with the real issues. There may be ways of us showing this. I don't know how you feel about that.
Okay, look, I mean, we will always do what you want us to do. If this you fine with it, it's fine. We can maybe go to the issue of the white paper, because it's one of the issues that you spoke about, and it was one of the agenda items.
The first agenda item actually was a progress report on the outstanding payments.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Let's remember that we had said one of the key issues, if you read here, it was saying, and the issue of the just when I read here, there was this issue that was raised around the white paper need for the changes, and previously we had raised the issue of mandate of the department. So we needed to clarify that because people were saying they don't know whether we are really acting within the mandate or is the mandate clear. So there was a need to make sure that that is done. But as we're gonna agree on the way forward, we might skip it for now and then let's move to the items that are in the agenda. And those are the ones that are here. Okay. Do you want to shift the slide so that you start with the outstanding payments, or we can?
Yeah, I think there's a big concern about the outstanding payments.
Okay.
They want to know what's happening there.
Chair,
Yes, Mr. Forbes.
maybe it would be helpful if you could email us the PowerPoint, and we will then put every slide up on the page so that everyone can see it and deal with it. But in the meantime, I think we should focus on the payment thing, because that is an incredibly urgent issue for our members. Is that acceptable to everyone? Thank you.
Not about the issue of the presentation. We will go to the way forward about whether the presentation is it should be, but let's share it for now. What we are saying that we did the audit, as I indicated, of SBOOK that time, and we said we were at an advanced stage, and this is an audit of how many payments that were projects. And this includes a variety of people who apply to what we call open call, people who submit these unsolicited funding things, and the artists who perform in various areas. So we have 160 that we had audited for 2019, of which 100 paid in full, 48 with challenges around the issue of, there is what we call a memorandum of agreement that we enter. When you ask for a project of 2 million, we will then say we will hold 10% or 20%, you implement the project, you submit the report, we then pay you the balance. So that is what we mean by tranches. So the first tranche, it means is projects that have then been paid, those first tranches, total not paid, 12. And then we said, okay, what could be the reasons that we said we'll share with you in relation to that. Of course, some beneficiaries, because we will not be able to give individually out of all, but you find that there are challenges of the compliance documents, whether it is the issues of tax, that means because we can't pay unless tax issues are cleared, for instance. Then there are issues of reports, if the reports, funds have been used, but the reports are either not talking to what is in the MOA, and or the reports are not yet submitted. There is this concept of item creation. Item creation means that we might have given you a letter, you remember that letter of commitment, and now we need to finalize the MOA, everything. We need to then pay you. But if we go and we check on the treasury system, you were just Vusim Kize, you had never done government, business with government. We are not able to then transfer that money until that item is created in the payment system of government. Now that usually is one of the things that we need to improve on in terms of efficiencies, so that when we say in timelines, once we have given you the letter, within so many days we must then give you the MOA. After such a period, the MOA must be finalized. Have you submitted all those documents? The checklist which we have developed, so that people will know, and we post it on the website. But I think those are mainly some of the hindrances in relation to that payment issues. But we are working on it, and as we've indicated, by the 29th, I'm sure that even that 12, where everything is compliant, we would have been able to address. where we are unable to address it, we address those issues with the individual person, but we're keeping an eye on the board. Maybe I must link this to what you had raised around the issue of service delivery efficiencies, because we needed to, this area is one of the areas that creates a lot of contestation. And people will submit also the multiple entries where people submit. They meet me at the national days and say, Ndima, I have this idea. Can you take this proposal? When it gets here, Mr. Ndima will give it to Lindy, for instance, instead of channeling it through a central database. But because of the domain work that they do, we find it sent there. So what we did then was to introduce last year a similar system that is called an automated track and trace system. 2, the call center that we do not have. But 3, that the track and trace system functionality must be able to tell you we have received. After receiving, it's adjudicated. After adjudication, what's the outcome? So that is how we've been able to, at least for this financial year, deal with this level of challenges that we've been having of people saying, but I don't know what has happened, what is going on with my application. So we then said to the team, they must also check if there is anyone else who might have then, other than using the open call online system, we might be sitting here, particularly ourselves as the DGs, the DDGs, and say, someone says, no, but I'm one of those. That we get that if it's possible that those who even are listening here say, I have this lead, you promised me, I've not been paid. That we channel those also through that system. It's led by Kgauhelo Dube, so that we are able to then follow through on those. But we don't want to stop the tendency of multiple entries and channel this into a central database, give a reference number, be able to then deal with it. And that's why I engage with the government public printing works, so they help me with this. You know, when you go to Home Affairs, there's a barcode. That makes sure that you don't lose the trace of an application. And if we can do that and then be able to give update on time to the beneficiaries or people who submit applications, I think that will assist us quite a lot in terms of feedback loop and improving service delivery and deal with our own inefficiencies that I have said before, we are not angels. We have the challenges.
DG, can I just clarify? Are you saying, according to your slide, in 2019 there were only 160 organizations, individuals, or projects awarded funding, and of those 100 were paid? Is that? And are you only looking at the financial year for 2019? Are you looking beyond 2019? Did you look at those payments that are outstanding even earlier than dating back from earlier than 2019? Can I just
looking at
clarify?
2019, because what we did when the year started was to say what are the carryovers of 2018-19, so that those get paid, but that would have happened in 2019.
So according to this slide, only 12 have not been paid, and they will probably be paid by the end of the month.
I said as long as I have everything, yes. Item creation is done, and the issues of compliance, the reports are submitted, the MOAs are signed, and then we are able to deal with that. And that is why we have visibility of who. We've got a list of these people.
And I just want to clarify, is this for open calls? Do these include bursaries that were allocated to students as well? Or what funding area are you responding to in this slide?
Can I clarify the issue of bursaries? They will come in.
Okay.
Remember, bursaries, we deal with universities.
Well, for undergrad. Postgrad, yes. You deal with the students directly?
No. If you want us to give the breakdown of which universities, how we work with them in terms of the bursaries, we'll provide you with that. and it's bursaries for heritage, which is in the side of Mr. Ndima. So when we deal with these bursaries, and the bursaries for languages, which is in the side of Mr. Mabazo, we have that database of all those that we need to pay and where we are now for the new financial year. So when I talk about bursaries, it's a separate process.
So we're not talking bursary funding here, we're only talking project. And you funded 160 projects across the country last year. And how many applications, do you know how many applications for funding did you receive?
We can check on our database there in terms of that, but we do have that. But for now, can I finish, boss? Otherwise I will not be able to finish. If there is a follow-up, we know we have set up a process, isn't it, for us to be able to engage. But that's a summation at this stage. So if you know about bursaries, where there is a problem, let me know. But I can tell you, up to a level, personally, I went to VETS if the issue arises about VETS. And I went there, I met with the students. And we addressed the issue with VETS and the university itself and the students. And the students were there in that meeting. And there was a process we agreed to, and that was before the close of December. I met with the students. Okay. Can we proceed? Can we proceed? Slide. Yeah, we have explained it's just the issue of what, and again, if you look at those things that you are showing there. Can we then proceed with what is the next item? I think let's just follow what is in the item. And we go to policy.
Maybe I think we need to preface this by maybe looking at what you put on paper, that you would want to still see some amendments in the current white paper. So it's very important that we kind of explain the processes that went to the making of the current white paper, which is currently with the portfolio committee. Just to say that the process started in 2013. It was during the time of the ministry of former Minister Nathi almost completed around 2013. But of course, when the new minister, which is the current minister, came in 2014, the sector then requested that they wanted to further look at the white paper and see if most of the things that they would have wanted to see in the white paper were there. And the minister gradually opened the process. Around 2015, you had the appointment of the reference panel, which was chaired by Professor Oliphant to revise the 1996 white paper. Of course, the main focus was just to look at what were the inherent weaknesses of the 1996 and how those could be strengthened. So I'm not going to go through this, but I must say that there were public consultations that were done in provinces. You also had the entire sector being segmented in order to ensure that various sectors or sub-sectors within the arts, culture, and heritage sector were consulted. I'm talking about national agencies and institutions, like including performing arts institutions, funding institutions of arts and culture, heritage institutions, museums, libraries. CIPSA was also consulted. In fact, CIPSA even had a representative there. SARA was also consulted. Provincial arts, culture, and heritage departments were were consulted. So the need for an integrated national, provincial, and local system of government emerged from this process. The first draft was completed in August 2016, and the second draft was completed in November 2016, and tabled at the National Ndara on 17 and 18 November 2016. The third draft was finalized on the 3rd of February 2017, and the fourth draft was finalized in October 2017. Now, when you are doing policy, the current requirement is that it must undergo socio-economic impact assessment. The socio-economic impact assessment study commenced in April 2017 and was received by the department in August 2017. Then the revised report was completed and submitted to DSAC in February 2018. And of course there was a need, because it's very clear that the Department of Arts and Culture cannot be an island. So, it has got ramifications for other government departments. So the interdepartmental consultation with SEA report was done in April 2018 with the Departments of Trade and Industry, Science and Technology, Department of Basic Education, as well as Higher Education and Training. Those reports were submitted to DPME in May and June 2018, and then that provisional certificate was issued. Ultimately, the white paper was then presented to the cluster. DT, you will help me. The SPCHD is Social Protection, Community and Human Development Trust. That policy was presented there. Ultimately, it was presented to Cabinet. And Cabinet endorsed the white paper on arts, culture, and heritage in August 2018. And immediately after that, I think around 2019, we were then able to present it to the portfolio committee. So that's where I would want to stop, that it's gone a long way. We really had to ensure that all sectors participate. Hence, the minister had to even stop the process that had been started before he came, around 2012, 2013. In fact, 2013, we were then supposed to present it for final adoption. But when the sector came and said, look, we are still not happy, can you please give us more time? And that time was provided. Hence, you can see the long process up until 2018 when it is finally being endorsed by Cabinet, and then of course 2019 being sent to Portfolio Committee on Arts, Culture and Heritage. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that is where we are with the white paper. So the question was, in terms of Cabinet, that the horse has bolted, if I can put it that way. The only thing that we can await guidance, even tomorrow we'll be going back to Portfolio Committee. They've asked for this legislative program, the legislation that we're going to be presenting there. And again, we will be there tomorrow. So, in a nutshell, it is the Parliament that can decide whether to call for public hearings again or not, and if that is what they would like to do. And then on the request whether you can meet the Portfolio Committee of Parliament, you are free to do that as long as you write to them and you request the meeting. I don't think they will consider, look at their programs and be able to accommodate you if they can at the time that they can decide. But it is something that we cannot tie them or untie them. We can just indicate that even when we meet them to say there was just this consideration, but if they receive a written correspondence, I'm sure they will respond to you accordingly. Yes.
DG, just a quick question. I see this beautiful history of the white paper. Is there a time frame as to when it should actually be passed? Because you can't have a teenager of a white paper. Because now it's growing up. soon it's going to get married and have children. We can't have that. This white paper has got to become legislation at some point. Is there a time frame? Is there any urgency to, because the thing about it is, so the paper, if my memory serves, okay, this process that you have highlighted here starts from the middle of the actual process. When I remember well, when I started singing in the 90s, this process was on. From the first Arts and Culture department of the democratically elected republic, there was this process going on. So in my memory, this process has been going on for 26 years. So just let me finish. And I'm not saying this is on you as the current people in the government now. I'm just saying, is there any urgency to finalizing this process? Because every time a different set of people come in and they say, we don't like this, can we revise it? How are we revising something that has never been finalized? There's got to be a beginning, a middle, and an ending. And then once it's in place, then you can say, no, it's not working, let's revise. But at the moment, it looks like for 25 years, this has just been the beginning, the middle, and we revise. There's never an ending, so that you can say, this is wrong. What has been the intellectual premise behind the revision of the paper for the past 25 years if it has not been tested? And for me, that is what makes the urgency non-existent in this process. So I understand where people took over and they're trying to understand, and why the frustration with the industry would be that you guys cannot agree. But let's face facts. Same as cabinet changes every 5 years. With the white paper, even the committees that have been brought in from the industry itself have been different. But the truth of the matter is, there's never been one finality about this paper. And every time the revision happened, what is being revised, it's never been finalized, not once. It's never been tested, not once. It's just somebody else coming in and saying, no, but I want to put my stamp on it because my voice also has to be heard. It's a waste of time, it's a waste of resources. We have to come to a point where we say, this thing has to be put to the test. And this is my question. Is there even a date to when that can happen? Because we can't keep revising something that has not been tested, because what are we revising?
I think we've got a direct answer to that one.
Thank you very much. Maybe let me just correct some things slowly. This white paper that is being revised is the 1996 white paper. That white paper has been implemented. It gave birth to different sets of legislations. The legislation that establishes the National Heritage Council, the National Arts Council, all the institutions that you have, have been established. So those legislative frameworks arise out of this policy. So there has been implementation. So when the process started, to then say, let's review it, it's because of the gaps that had been identified in the implementation of the policy. Some of them, it's about duplication of efforts. When you establish institutions, in the beginning, you think that their niches are well established. But as you proceed with implementation, you begin to see that other institutions are stepping on each other's toes, all those kinds of things. But also the multiplicity and the proliferation of institutions, many institutions. From the point of view of sustainability, you need to look at that to say, every time you establish a museum, are you going to have a council for each and every museum? How are you going to manage the transportation, the per diems? So this particular is beginning to look at that. When we looked at this in 1996, those who were there in the making of the 1996 paper, there were issues of technical services, for instance. They were not that much topical. But as you see in the development of the arts, you can see now that there's this much interest in this area. And also, it had to accommodate all those kinds of things. So you ask a very pertinent question. Is there no deadline? Of course, one would like to have that deadline. But if government then just comes and say, here is our deadline, it's going to be like we're coming to the industry, having already predetermined times, but we need to listen so that whatever goes to the white paper, the finalized white paper, has got that kind of a blessing from the industry. But also, I must say that as we were trying to round off the process, there were also artists who then went, and then went to complain to the portfolio committee to say, no, we're not going to accept this white paper. So I just wanted you to appreciate those complexities in trying to finalize this white paper. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sure the agency is there from the side of government. We will be able to get this thing concluded quite soon. I'm sure this year we will be having the next steps in relation to this document. But we want it because it has impact on a number of other legislation frameworks that we need to change. Okay, I think the issue then of the copyright and the performance protection bill, because we don't have time, we just want to reiterate. You remember in the last meeting, Cisbo got a bit angry, but I was saying you are divided as a sector. Because remember, the producers of content are fighting that this is going to rob them. They don't have a sense of security about their intellectual property. The performers who are the users of content saying, I am sitting on code, I am being exploited, approve this thing. Particularly noting that it comes from very far, from a commission that was done by from Farm Commission, where there were serious gaps of exploitation. So government needed to deal with this because this is a very old legislation. It's pre-democracy that you are frustrated with as creatives. So at this stage, to summarize, just to say that a number of work has been done, engagements. We've been part to that, working with DTI as a department. We've been joining them, going with them to Parliament to present these things. So what is happening now is that just when Parliament had finalized and forwarded them to the President, there was again the voices of the producers of content who was just saying, no, we don't agree. One of the issues they're raising is about the issue of technology impact and how we're going to monitor that on their work. They talk about the books. The publishers were very clear about how we're going to protect this content in terms of their books. If it is going to be used willy-nilly, there is issue of Google, issue of e-books. There were just a number of issues they are raising. So President then said to the two ministers, can you again, as I'm considering, meet the sector, because I hear different voices. We met them. I was fortunately present in that meeting with colleagues. We said, let's start. Should the president sign or not sign? The house was divided in the middle. Those who said sign, those who said don't sign. And others came with their presentations and motivations. We said, okay, can you meet and just see if you can advise us as government? Because this thing affects the industry. So we then engaged, and then it was quite clear that consensus could not be reached by the creatives who were there. What then happened was that proceeded, the president was given feedback, and then he started with the process. I'm sure it was well articulated, where he then said he wanted to test this against the Constitution to test if it meets the constitutional muster. And again, then we met ourselves in the DTI. We went through, we looked at the issues that were raised with our legal services and legal services of DTI. We have provided our feedback to that, and I think the President then will make the determination, but that's where the process is as we speak. I think, I'm not sure now because I really had budgeted for 3 hours. If I am allowed, I'm not trying now, because if I talk to the partnership with, I think we did talk to the departmental interface between us and basic education. It's there, we've got the detail there, but we have already spoken to that. But we can say that under the issue of infrastructure, under MGE, one of the key purposes was to increase access and make sure that there are access platforms. What has been done, and you might not be aware, and we looked at which part of the country, provinces, have got theatres. Free State has got Parkhouse, Durban has got, KZN has got Playhouse, there is Artscape in Western Cape. We then said, okay, but there's nothing in Northern Cape. There's nothing in Limpopo. Gauteng is covered. So what has been done was, firstly, the one of Northern Cape is finished. They have now the theatre, Northern Cape. We just been delaying the issue of the opening it, but it's there now. Last year we started the process of Limpopo. We provided the money. They were conducting what we call feasibility study. They came back just towards the end of the year that the issue of the land and everything else has been addressed, and therefore then they're going to be moving towards the issue of having a theatre in Limpopo. So we were left, I think, with Mpumalanga that we said is outstanding. We need to also start focusing on that. So that is about creation of platforms so that then we can build audiences where artists can do that. Then we've got a widespread of where the community art centers are. And we've been funding those community art centers and their programs. So we then have what we call libraries. You will see the geographic spread of libraries. Even empowered with what we call the ICT as one of those, but also job creation that you need at least a minimum of 3 people to be able to make a library. These libraries are either brick and mortar or they are what we call modular libraries. So that you address those. We've got that breakdown. As you know, we account to Parliament, we get audited, we submit annual financial statements, so annual reports. So you will see some of those things. But the issue of dealing with rural areas and townships, we agree with you. It's work in progress. We have not really reached as many as we would like to, but definitely the programs are afoot in addressing those areas. But we thought that the theatres are quite critical because that's where artists have an opportunity. You can use that for variety of work that can be done. I'm sure we should be able to continue progressively and to address those shortages and improve access. Yes, yes.
Just talking about infrastructure, existing infrastructure, we talk about theatres in the different provinces. Truth of the matter is, on the ground, that those structures are not serving the artists. As an artist, as a producer, if I want to use the building right down the road, the State Theatre, I have to pay a rental of 30,000 rand. Now, I still have to pay artists, I still have to buy costumes, I still have to pay transport, still have all kinds of things. There's a building that is not user-friendly for artists because the funding model does not allow. So even if there's a building, if it's not accessible, it's just as well that it's not there. And community art centers, truth be told, are not particularly functional right now. They are not. You have structures that are built. It's like you're building houses that are not occupied by anybody. And yes, from an auditor's perspective, it's there and there's funding that has been channeled towards it, but it's not reaching the intended recipients. So yes, it looks good on paper, it's just not serving. That's why then we are sitting with an issue of artists who are saying, we cannot access these things. What is the point of having a whole state theater with a whole opera theater that no opera musician can access?
Maybe just to add on what Mr. Mngoma said, I just want to find out, much as we can applaud and I congratulate you on the theaters, like you just made mention of the Kimberley Theatre, but the plan, my question therefore is, what is it that you had in mind when you say we're going to open theaters? Because we are sitting on the other side of the table, we know there are theaters but you can't access them. So what is your plan? Why are you having these theaters?
And just to add to that, you know, speaking of something like park-offs, you go to park-offs, you ask for space. The offices are occupied by departments of government that have nothing to do with arts and culture. And I'm sure there's a reason for it, but the truth of the matter, it's no longer accessible to the industry.
And how do I respond to a question, why do you need a theater to an artist?
When the artist cannot access it. It's about access. It's about affordability.
With the issue of how to access, because the rent and the lease are too high. Then you're saying, department, we think you can engage with your institutions and say, this is what possibly is affordable, taking into account, of course, they must pay operational costs and all those things. But at the end of the day, this is meant to be a beehive of activity. Because the country shouldn't be a sleeping country. You can't have tourists who come here in this country, they are loitering at 5 o'clock, this town is a ghost town. When you have creatives that can offer so much for them to see, because then you are marketing, you're making South Africa really, I mean, there are countries, small, as you will know, you are a traveler of note and the colleagues are here, that survive on cultural, creative industries and cultural tourism. Nothing more, nothing less. They don't have the minerals what we have there. So we are of the same vision and mission. The question is mechanisms to make it work. So I agree with you. Then it's a debate different. But I can't say Limpopo must sit without a theatre. I must say Limpopo, you will have a theatre, but deal with the issue of how can you make sure that this is a beehive of activity. Children are able to grow there and go into the stage and they sing. I mean, when I went there, I saw one of the artists, this state theatre here. And something I remember, we were not lucky to have this thing. Then you see people coming underground, you say, hey, what is happening? As if it's a miracle. And it's just because we've never seen it before. You know? But your artists are using it. It's their asset. I think that is the message you are sending to us. You say, okay, DJ, can you go and meet with park-offs? Just say, what would be the affordable without breaking you so that you pay for electricity? Because if I give you for R5 but you don't have electricity, you can't use it. So those are the balancing acts that we must deal with around that. But first, let us not water down why we should build the theaters. Let us agree, if you go there, you can't use Sun City. So what should be there for the artists in Northwest? Are you with me? But we must agree in that context. I hear what you're saying, but we do need infrastructure, and we agree with you. Yes.
So my understanding, please correct me if I'm wrong here, is that institutions like State Theatre, Parkhoffs, Joburg Theatre get given funding to run. Okay, Artscape, State Theatre, Artscape, those entities get funding. So their logistics are actually taken care of. So in terms of keeping the electricity on, that funding is already provided. So the artists shouldn't actually be penalized because now they have to keep their electricity on. Essentially, then we should be talking about how do we make the productions going in there profitable as opposed to paying electricity, because that is already provided by the National Department of Arts and Culture. It is there. It's already there. It's in place. So why are we making it seem like it's not there? It is there. So when artists or the industry wants to use the spaces, it's no longer about logistics. It's about how do we make this a profitable exchange, right?
Again, we've got a profitable exchange so that the place does not run down. Operational costs must be run, and they must be paid. I agree with you. Sufficiency of whether the budget is enough that they get for salaries, for the electricity. You find that there is a challenge with the bill of electricity. What I'm agreeing with you is first is to agree that there must be a mechanism that will engage with them that you are able to access, isn't it?
Yes.
But at the same time, it cannot be run down. So when you're using the word profitability of the, so that it's self-sustainable, is able to provide a quality platform. You don't go to a Mkuku when you think you are going to a state theatre. You must be proud when you exercise your craft when you go there. So what I'm saying is that I agree with you fully. Let us say, but it's one of the issues that you are saying needs to be addressed. Accessibility even of those state theatre.
Okay, I don't know if I'll be diverting from what we're talking about because I saw there's another hand. There are some questions that came online that needs to be addressed. One is what you, at some stage you were stressing in this meeting, and I think it's important because it is recorded in this meeting, your frequent reference to CIFA. Most artists don't even know CIFA. CCIFA, am I right? CIFSA, yeah, CIFSA. And they are actually, the thing is, what happened is that after Ms. Sibongile Mngoma wrote those two open letters, this is how this movement started. I'm sure we all know that. And then people from the ground who are not affiliated to any organization identified with those issues, and hence they are now on our Facebook group of I Am for the Arts. So somehow for them it is kind of patronizing to say we need to be under like a formalized structure and referring to CIFSA. And interestingly enough, I have seen also on the page that there are people who claim that they are actually in the executive and they're even struggling to hand over because money has been abused. And these are not my opinions, these are things that people are saying there on the page. So they strongly want to disassociate themselves with organizations that they do not know. And again, Mr. DG, with all due respect, please don't use this as a weapon to say artists are divided. Artists are not divided. And then I'm just gonna run through the whole list. And then the other one is some people want disclosure. Is that a long list?
12, yeah, please, because we already took 75. Anything is going to continue as you are talking, someone is thinking of something.
Yes.
Let's agree on how you're going to channel those things. But
okay, yes.
I must manage time.
Okay, thanks for that. And then the other one, I know you may not even have time to respond to all of these. And the other one is the one on the report that DDG was giving. They wanted disclosure of a list of the bodies that were paid and the projects that they were doing. I think you said it's 100 of them. They wanted disclosure of the list of which bodies or which companies are they, because this is a public purse we're talking about. And the other one is about the white paper, which is, I think it's the last one. Artists, when you're alluding to artists being divided, saying president signed, president, and others saying the president mustn't sign, the artists are not necessarily divided. There are people or producers of work or publishers, whatever you may call them, who are actually benefiting from the exploitation of the artists who do the actual work. Hence, now you think, or the government thinks there is a division. There isn't a division. People who are benefiting from the corruption are the people who don't, main people who don't want the white paper to be signed, and because they benefit in a corrupt manner. And yeah, I think that was the last one. Thank you.
Just by your summary, there are those who are benefiting corruption, and they will argue, they are not here, that it is not true that I'm disputing this bill because I'm corrupt. They will argue and say it's not true. So let's not make a blanket statement about reasons why people are saying sign or don't sign, Mr. President. You know, it's dangerous because there might be those who are on your side about this bill, but they have concerns. And I have raised some of the concerns that they have raised with us directly. So let's not try and paint everybody as if this body of our sector are people who have everything thinking in the unison. We are all humans. We have certain things we agree with, there are things we don't agree with. Now, the fact of the matter is I'm sitting with you now. President needed also that guidance. In the meeting I was in, there were those who were saying yes and there were those who were saying no. And that is why this country is beautiful. It allows voices, different as they are. But at the end of the day, decision will have to be made. So let's agree that we will deal with that. On the issue of the publication, that is what we have done. We have the whole list. Because you see, it's problematic when everybody comes here and say, I'm not funded by the department, when they know they're funded by the department. So the best thing to do is to make sure that we do consider that publication and just say, because it's not a secret. So we agree with you. We look into that and the website, we say yes, but Sisi Sibongile, you were funded at some point, you know, so that we don't have an issue that says, no, Sisi Sibongile or
Hedwig.
the nice name, Hedwig, we're not funded. It comes here, please poverty, but in fact, she is able to we can confirm that we were given 2 million.
DG.
Yeah.
DG, please clarify that you're using an example, because I have not been funded by the department. Let's be clear.
I'm making an example.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm now using the Bantu education example. I will say example. So can we then move, because you will advise us if there are things that were left, and you will then engage SISBO as usual to say, but we left this one out, because of time constraint. And then on the issue of public commitment to end cadre deployment, I think this language is used by, if ANC is in government in Polokwane, the opposition will say, yeah, cadre deployment. If you are now in Western Cape and you feel that no, this is run by the ANC, then says, cadre deployment. We can't have that blanket statement. It's a political statement. I'm not going to get involved in it. But I can tell you one thing, is that through the Department of Public Service and Administration, there are clear processes and procedures that are followed to appoint people in government. From level 1 to 12, it even allows unions to be observers in that process. Then for the senior management, SMS in government, it goes to a level of what we call competency assessment processes. So I don't want to be involved in the political jargon that is used out there. If colleagues have got a concern around the issue of appointments, let's deal with those. But please allow me to recuse myself from the use of cadre deployment. It will be very difficult, because then I must choose where my slice is buttered, and then say, there, in Swane, maybe because I don't like who is in charge, the cadre deployment. Or I go to Joburg and say, you see, cadre deployment. So for us it will help to just explain that in the department, whole country, in fact there is what we call now non-negotiables set up by the DSAC in terms of requirements. That if you are going to be a director, you must meet these minimum requirements. If you are going to be a chief director, this is minimum. If you are going to be, you can check that on the DSAC, but are non-negotiable for the entry level onto those positions. But really, I did agree that we do have our challenges, but as the words of Mr. Forbes keep coming, hey, DG, answer phones, DG, respond. That's why even in our APP now, we've included a value called responsiveness. Because we realize that this is where we get a hammering, and we need to work on this thing, because it frustrates people when we don't respond. So we take that criticism wholeheartedly, and we're going to definitely work on making sure that we address this issue of responsiveness.
Okay, on the issue of cadre deployment, maybe for a lack of a better word, we may change that from cadre deployment to there's an inner circle type of mentality around who gets appointed or who gets commissioned, where it's not we talk about open calls, but these are not open calls. Let's just call it what it is. It depends who you know, how close you are to the ones who are in charge, for you to even know there's an open call. It's not something that you will find on the front page of any newspaper on a given day. So let's agree that that is the truth. If it's on my phone contact list, then the people on my phone contact list are the ones that will know about it. It's like me sending a broadcast on my WhatsApp and saying I sent a broadcast message. That's not a broadcast, that's a broadcast to my contact list. So there's a difference. So if it's an open call, it's got to be a national call. Anybody should be able to access it at any given time. If you're a South African, you are even in Sydney, you should be able to answer the open call if it is an open call. So let's just say then, let's reword that and say, we won't call it cadre deployment, but we will say it becomes an inner circle type vibe, where literally, if you are not connected, you won't know that there's even an open call. Whereas if, I will use again the same example I used the last time about if you want to apply to UCT, you want to apply to VITS, you know that the deadlines are, and you know where the forms will be found. And that's an open call for everybody to apply. Whereas if only a few people know, oh, by the way, there was an open call, the closing date is the 30th of July, then it's not an open call. It's not. So please, let's just then fix that and say we move away from saying cadre deployment to saying open calls are not open. Can we open them up so that everybody has equal access?
Do you want to respond on that? Just to say what happened just now, so that we...
I think you can speak to that because it's with the online system. But I might say with this application that went out, the last one, it was online. So anybody, wherever they were, they could access it. And secondly, it was publicized. It was there on our social media pages. It was there on our website. We'll take note maybe to get on DG in terms of the national print media, to ensure that maybe it's there. We even had a few radio stations covering it as well, talking about it during the open call. So the online open call was out there. Everybody knew. We even created a leaflet, like a WhatsApp thing that people could pass on. Because I noticed that with WhatsApp, you are able to pass on to and reach more people with that. So that was done with this last call. So we are working. We've heard what the sector has complained about when it comes to that. Hence, even the move from the manual to the online. Because it does open it up, it does create more transparency, it creates more accountability. So that's where we are now. And even the next open call would even be better, because we do acknowledge that a lot of people said there were glitches with our system. So we're working on improving that. So it's even accessible through phones, because this past one was only through laptops or computers. So we will make it mobile devices compatible as well. Thank you.
Kgauhelo?
I would just also like to talk about other opportunities outside of MGE open calls. For example, who gets chosen for the inauguration? Who gets to go to the international events that the Department of Arts and Culture is a part of? We don't have access to that information. I know this year, South Africa is part of the Rotterdam or what, Gothenburg, the book fair.
Gutenberg.
And yeah, Gutenberg. Yeah, and I work in publishing and literacy, but I don't know how I can collaborate with the department in that sense. So outside of MGE, there are other activities happening within the department, but we can't access them. There are opportunities for work that are sporadic, that artists can capitalize on, but we're not accessing that information.
Okay, we hear you, and that's why I think we will make sure that all those, but I want to talk to that, Elisa, but I want us to close now, and because of time, and we agree on the way forward, because I think this issue of us having an engagement with the sector is quite crucial.
DG, will you provide us with minutes, seeing as we provided the minutes for the last meeting? Could we also then go into discussions after this as to where we meet and how we make it possible for ourselves to be available for meetings? As Sibongile mentioned, some of us simply are not able to be here without some form of acknowledgement of the time and resources it takes to be physically present. But we can take that conversation out of this meeting. I just want a commitment from you that we can receive minutes from you guys, as well as some kind of open conversation around how we make a continued engagement practically possible.
Yeah, in fact, that's why I didn't want Elisa to start responding now, because I need to close the meeting. But just noting, because when she talks about Gothenburg, I'm sure do you really want to say something there? Except that because she's just raising to say transparency. That's what she's talking about. And for us to be clear how do we do the selection of
just
people.
Briefly, teaching. Thank you. Sorry, with your camera, I can't see her directly.
Okay, let me move out of your way.
Impolite if I don't see the person.
No problem, I'll move out of your way.
I think just briefly about the Gothenburg Book Fair. There has been a national steering committee formed by the department, and the national steering committee has looked at the sort of, the content of the fair, the seminars, the authors, and so forth. There are various opportunities that are still going to be announced around publishers. I think if I can just maybe announce that the Swedish embassy is in fact on their website making opportunities available for publishers also to attend the fair. We have focused so far on the mainstream seminars where South Africa is the country of focus, but those are only a few of the events at the fair. One of the next phases will be to go on and to identify all the other platforms as well where South Africa can participate. But we hope that either at the end of March or early April to do a press or media event where all of these will be, I suppose, publicized to the nation at large. But the steering committee that was appointed does have sort of either authors or festival organizers or those in the book sector from around the country. I would not say, I mean, I'm not here to say whether it's broadly representative, but it is among the best minds that were identified to participate in the process.
And my fellow South Africans, I think we've really dragged the meeting. Can I get to the real issue of the next steps? Yeah? So that you are able to then assist me. Let's go back to the issue of SIFA.
Yes, sir.
SIFA is what we are determined to work with, because we cannot meet with individuals. There are many organizations in this country representing various domains and subsectors. But the reason why SIFSA was established was because of a call made to say, we understand your challenges, we hear them, but there are so many, there's no way government can interact with individuals every day. But if you are organized, like you said, there are different organizations, let us then gather the voice of the creatives and make sure that those voices are channeled in a way that government can know. Just like any other sector, you've got your COSATUs, you've got your AMCOs, you've got some organization that will assist us to say, even if you are not able to come here, you have your structure down there that is able to escalate your matters. So that is why even now, when we had the elections in what is this? In Pumalanga, when there were elections of SIFSA in Pumalanga, we were there because we wanted to make sure there is full representativity in that process. We started even up at the district level. District level. So what I'm appealing is that I think it will be important that Wives of the Arts also does engage with SIFSA. To say this is who we are. If it is an organization or is a part, for now I think it's more of a movement that is saying there are challenges in the arts. So that when we move forward from here, the number Ted was I don't know whether Sisbong was it a telepath or not. She said, I rather present everything. Because it won't be possible to find everybody who wants to come and meet with me or the department. It's not going to be possible. So what we wanted to indicate was that from our side, the best mechanism going forward is that we do have an Ndara. Now I know most people will say, what Ndara? But I think government is dealing with this issue of sector compacts, where all issues of a sector, whether it is social sector, whether it is, because I think you raised one of the key issues about GBV, just that we didn't spend time on that issue in the industry, looking at what is happening in Hollywood, big producers exploiting women. In this country, we are not also immune to that. That's why the minister even signed a pledge with the SWIFT. I don't know if some of you know SWIFT, in a fight against gender-based violence in the sector. There are others that have raised their frustrations and exploitations in the sector. But you can imagine if we were to meet everyone without a federation, it's going to be a problem. Now we are saying you have a problem with the federation, fix the federation, it's your federation. Because if you don't fix, you can't say you don't know in this country the receiver. How is that possible?
Sorry, Mr. DG.
Yeah.
It's not ours the interesting thing is that even in the movement that Ms. Mngoma started, there are people who claim to be the actual leaders of CIFSA, and they joined this movement, and they say they squandered the money, they can't even have a conference to hand over to the new executive. So how can we go and sit in that little corner with an organization that doesn't exist and is accused of squandering money and failing to lead the people that they're supposed to be leading?
But they can't lead you if you don't even know them.
Okay.
But
okay.
So
sorry, DG.
I can give you the contact.
Let me just give a bit of direction on the CIFSA issue.
Yeah, please.
CIFSA is like an organization that is supposed to be like a union that represents artists. But now here's the problem. CIFSA was established by the department. So CIFSA feels, or the people that are in CIFSA now feel that their allegiance is towards the government as opposed to the artists. So if I'm representing artists and my allegiance is to the person that I'm representing the artist to, then we have already a conflict of interest right there. Now, personally, say I'm speaking as Sibongile Mngoma. When I started for the Arts, it was to include everybody regardless. And I believe in the space there is a place for a union or a federation of artists, but that's a very small fraction of what we are about now. What we are about now, if we go back to our first conversation, is the health of the entire industry. Unions and federation can only represent a small fraction of issues based on the rights, practices, and that. But there are other issues broader than that. And hence I keep going back and saying the industry is too broad to tell us to go to CIFSA. If you want to be heard, you will go to CIFSA. Even they wouldn't know what to do with us because it is just that broad. You would need, CIFSA is not even equipped to deal with the industry as a whole. So first of all, for CIFSA to represent the industry, they first of all have to be equipped. You need art administrators in there. You need every discipline of the creative industries to be represented in there, which they are not. So yes, there is CIFSA, they have their problems. We are more than happy to assist to make it a viable entity. Right now, it is not. And quite frankly, I can say this for myself. I don't feel they represent me because I don't feel that they even understand what they do. If they can come to the page and call me Dolly Parton who sings opera, an elitist art form, then they actually care nothing for me. They care nothing to represent me. And I'm talking about the people who have identified themselves as the leaders of the current CIFSA. So those are the people who will go online and victimize me as a woman based on the fact that I have big boobs like Dolly Parton. That is GBV right there. And then they're going to sit there and call me elitist. And then you want me to legitimize the same federation that is violating me as a woman in the space who has taken up the voice of the artists and the creative industries. And how am I not being victimized by you right now, DJ?
And if I can just add here, well, I'm sure you can all hear me. You know, the whole thing is that CIFSA was established with taxpayers' money. We want to see how that money was spent, and we can't. CIFSA will not produce financials. We don't know where that money went, who spent it, how it was spent. So there's a whole issue there with the integrity of that organization. We, as for the Arts, we want to engage with everyone. We want to engage with every arts organization. We want to engage with every political party and everything, because we see ourselves as a national movement trying to carry artists and arts and culture and heritage in this country forward. We want the best thing for everyone in this country, but there are people who have narrow interests. There are patriarchs. There are men who think that they can abuse women in this movement, and it is just unacceptable. And the department, that is why we want you guys to stand up and say publicly, this stuff is not acceptable. It is not acceptable to make remarks at women. It is not acceptable to put cadres in. It is not acceptable to give jobs, projects to friends. It is not acceptable. We need to know where you stand on it, because if not, you are part of the problem. Now we want to solve that with you, and we would like a group that we can engage with, who are empowered by the department to make decisions at a high level and actually make sure that they get implemented within clearly defined time frames, and that people are held accountable for implementing them, so that we know we are going forward step by step. It's not just another Ndara, it's not another Lachotla, it's not another talk shop. We need action, and we want action, and we will force action if necessary. And I don't want to threaten anyone. We want to work with you. But please, you need to listen to the artists. You need to respect us.
I think the important thing, DG, is that as much as, because it's already an existing federation, there is that we have invested so much to build this thing up. But truth be told, it's not working. And if there's a way to rehabilitate it, make it work, good and wonderful. We are ready to work with it. But right now, it's become an abusive body that you are told to go back to your husband because you married him, but he's busy slapping you left, right, and center, raping you every night, because now the system has legitimized the union by giving him a marriage certificate. I'm sorry, I cannot agree to that. I will not be raped by SIPSA on social network every day and legitimize them by sitting in this meeting with the department and saying, I will go and I will report to SIPSA, who will not even acknowledge that I'm a human being. They will victimize me, and they will objectify me because I'm a woman who has decided to stand up. And we are perpetrating the violation of women by saying we legitimize the men who don't care nothing for women. That structure is so full of abusive, violent men, and nobody's saying anything about that. How come?
Fix it.
Wait, DJ, are we done?
And it's a pity that SIPSA is not here for them to respond for themselves. But if, as you know, government led at the highest level on the gender-based violence emergency response plan, is very clear about that. And that is why even ourselves need to report and respond weekly on the issue of what is being done around this issue of gender-based violence, in line with the emergency response plan that the President has developed in the civil society against it. And I'm sure at some point when there is an opportunity to be there, because SIPSA currently is led by Ms. Mbewan, is a woman herself, as a president of SIFSA. There's a new leadership there, that there will be an opportunity to engage and express your frustrations around that issue of abuse, but also even ourselves have a responsibility if any of those platforms are abused, to abuse women, not only by SIFSA, by anybody. That must we must act decisively against abuse of women and children in the country. So I just wanted to get to the point of, from here, the intention is that we will have Ndara, because at the end of the day we do have to find a mechanism to address these issues. For now we are able to do them at the bilateral level as we are doing now, but we do need to have the whole sector represented in that, as we have indicated in that session. And we will work towards that while we are not stopping to address issues we have raised and the opportunity for the feedback. What you are saying, Mr. Forbes, and what was raised by Pumza, is that I must also be frank that it's not possible for me to fund traveling. Because if I'm saying to you I'm going to do that, I would be lying to you. Already as I'm sitting here, there were requests that were also saying we are coming to the meeting. They would also say, Mkiza, can you find us DG? We will find that so and so. So our engagement, we must not lose sight of why we are engaging. And as I'm saying, we'll continue, even if it is true, on how other mechanisms to engage. But I have an obligation to also make sure that SIFSA takes responsibility for the sector. And it's a new leadership that is elected. Your point of reference is about what happened previously. And I'm not saying that the new leadership now also white wedding gown, they might have their own challenges. But I think it's an opportunity to also engage with them, because we do need a voice in the sector. And the fact that the artists feel they are victimized and no one is representing them, even with the producers, because we see what is happening there. The unions are established for a particular purpose. And I think that the SIFSA will have to make sure that they claim their space in that area. So for now, for me, it's quite, I know that we had said we will present and go, but I think it is good to give us an opportunity to respond. And can we agree that we will continue to engage? But it might not be in form of us funding you to come. I think I must be clear on that issue. So that it's go, if we are in Free State, we agree on a meeting, and it is not on the basis of will you fund me, whether it is Hedwig, because it's impossible for me to fund individual institutions to come to the meeting. And what I'm saying to you is not because I'm talking lies to you. I'm saying to you, I have people who are saying we're also coming. They also will say we're to fund me. So can we agree that we will continue to address the issues we've raised and continue to give feedback? If there is a mechanism we'll find, we'll do that, but let us, in fact not we'll find, we have a mechanism as you've said, but it might not be in form of a direct meeting all the time, but definitely that this engagement continues, and that SIFSA, we will make sure that we also bring them on board in terms of the issues we've raised and of frustration and the challenges, and that they must claim their place. That one is not something I can shy away from. It's going to be difficult to engage with people, with the different individual artists or different many federations or organizations, but at least we are able to have these platforms. Unless you have any other suggestion, but for me that is what I think for now. And we talk this more on how we're gonna then be able to give feedback on the issues we've raised. Yeah.
Gigi. Thank you for having us for this meeting. And I think we can safely say that based on everything that has transpired today, we are exactly where we started. We haven't made any moves. Yes, we spoke. Yes, we ticked the box off, we've been heard, but we are exactly where we started. And truth be told, from where I'm sitting, it looks like we're going to be stuck there for a while. So, as with the open letters, when we don't get happiness one way, we'll seek it another way. I'm just going to say this straight up front that yes, we've had this meeting and it's wonderful, but I don't feel that we have made any strides. Personally, I'm sure that most people from I'm for the Arts will agree that we haven't really made any strides. And therefore, please don't be surprised if we seek recourse and redress in other ways, because we still feel that we are not being heard, and that is just a summation from the engagements that we've had, is that if we're not getting the kind of recourse that we are seeking, we will keep seeking. It's the same even in the justice system. If the magistrate court doesn't give you what you want, you go to High Court. If the High Court doesn't give you, go to Constitutional Court. So essentially, we have been here. You've ticked your box. We've ticked ours. So now the next step, we will determine what our next step is. But to be quite frank, I won't even lie or pretend right now. I just feel that we haven't made any strides. We haven't made any movement. We are still exactly where we were when we walked into this room, and it doesn't look like it's going to change anytime soon. So I think I can safely say we will seek recourse some other way, because clearly this is not the platform for it or the forum for it, because the department is not hearing us.
Can I just say that we remain resolute and committed to work with you. We understand that 2 days might not be, in fact, the real first meeting that we are having an engagement. Would not have been able to maybe give you the totality of results we want for now, but I think it's a first step, and we remain committed, and I can assure you of that as a department, and that on the basis of our first meeting, that we need to make this sector succeed. And we know we can't do it on our own. We need to work with the sector. So for now, yes, maybe Rome was not built in one day, and the class deficit is something that is not easy to repair. But by our actions, we'll do the best we can to meet and address the needs of the sector. And I believe we are not ending with the engagement today, even if you were to seek other means, but that this door will remain open for us to engage with you when we remain committed to that. And other issues raised, we'll continue to address them. So from my side, I think at least we have a start, and I appreciate it and the spirit in which you were able to raise the issues also. We thank you very much for that. Okay, thanks.
We're done.